Hello and welcome to today's show. In our world today, there is a lot of negativity, which is fostered by degrading economy and a lot of turbulence in the world, both from the technological angle and the economic angle and the political angle and others. In fact, let me feed you some facts. About 280 to 332 million people are judged to be living in depression. And over 700,000 people actually, globally, die yearly because of suicide. The toll of this in Africa Milu is even too much because of high rate of insecurity, poor governance, corruption, ubiquitous poverty, and other social political ills like disease and degrading healthcare. So because of that, many people tend to fall into depression as their government keeps disappointing them. In this edition of Sirpeter's show, we feature Dr. Von Shurro. Dr. Von Shurro is a relational fanatic, a daughter, a wife, mother, sister, friend, and a general practitioner principal in Lincolnshire. She has a keen interest in holistic health and is committed to advocating for mental health, raising awareness, and destigmatizing mental health issues. She's backed by a degree in medical law and ethics, and she believes in promoting therapeutic conversation at home, in our communities, and in our workplaces. And that she feels that we shouldn't shy away from prickly topics. She's also an aspiring writer and the founder of Kingdoms Eagles Network and the co-founder of Beulah Oak Wellness. She's the head of Ùgòchúkwú PS as lead for publicity and social media in the first Lincolnshire group. Dr. Von Shurro, practices in the UK, though originally she's from Zimbabwe. But she has the heart of development for the African continent and is working on multiple initiatives, to promote education, well-being, mental health, and social development. Dr. Von Shurro, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, my brother. It's such a joy to be with you again, Ùgò. I have been waiting for this time for us to catch up and to talk again. I only have one bone to chew with you. And that's the fact that last time we were here, we ran out of time completely because we just had a lot to unpack in such a short space of time. I'm afraid this might be the same situation today because you have given us 30 or 40 minutes to try and unpack mental health literacy in Africa. I think we've got a mountain task ahead of us, not in the sense that it is impossible, but I think because it's such we can say, well, they say, to move mountains, you need a faith as small as a mustard seed, but I'm hoping that today will be a seed of conversation that is sown in that process of us beginning to tackle this issue. By all means, we're not going to exhaust everything that can be exhausted about the topic. But I'm just excited to be here, and I'm excited to have the conversation because I think such conversations have been long due. A lot of times we shy away from difficult conversations, and oftentimes because we're afraid, oftentimes because we're anxious and we do not know where to start. And, it's nice to have the lingo. It's nice to have the wording and to be able to articulate the issues that are at hand. And I think that's why I'm so thankful for you organizing this event and kindly inviting me to be a speaker here. I've invited many of my friends. I can't see who are our guests at the moment. But yeah, I would also want to extend a warm welcome to everybody who's going to be listening, because I personally extended the invitation, and I hope you'll be blessed, and I hope we can engage. I hope we can have a two-way conversation so that this next 40 minutes, maybe let's say 1 hour, so that it can be a very useful one and a productive one. Thank you for having me, Ugo. God bless you.
Welcome to the show. You know, as mental health means many things to many people, and there's kind of a misconception on that terminology, mental health. You know, please, what does mental health actually mean to you?
Right. That's a very good question. And I must admit, I really empathize with anybody who has got misconceptions about mental health, or who is even just confused about what mental health is. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s. I'm a trained GP, but I must say I have not actually really come to grapple and come to confidence in understanding what mental health is until the last few years, when I've really taken an interest in mental health, in terms of really knowing what it is. So, you know, if you're one of those people who are thinking, oh gosh, I don't even know what that means, you know, put on your seatbelt. We're in this together, and we're going to try and address this together. But to answer your question, to me, mental health, I think, is a lot of things. It's a lot of things, but in summary, mental health is the state of well-being that we're in because of our the function of our minds. That means what our health is with regards to our thought life, our thinking life, and our behavior life. In a personal sense, that's really what it means. When you come to definitions, my favorite definition is the World Health Organization definition of mental health. And in 2014, shall I proceed to share that definition? Yes. So in 2014, the revised version of it, the mental health stated that mental health is a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. Now, when you first hear that, I remember thinking, hang on, are we talking about mental health really? Because actually, the preconceived idea that I had in my mind had something to do with mental health disorders. That is what I was thinking.
So many people have such conception too. You know, we're talking about mental health, they see, oh, those people who are mentally kind of disabled or have mental issues or are actually suffering from one mental issue or the other. So there's that kind of. So I thank you so much for that clarification, and for the WHO's awesome definition. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So there is a difference between mental health and a mental health disorder, right? I will maybe, you know, it's funny when we put things in a physical context, we're much quicker to get it, and it becomes much more obvious.
Yeah.
But if you think of what good physical health is, we all can probably think of it. You're pain-free, you're fit, you're on your game, and things are going well. You're eating well, you're exercising, you're functioning in what you're doing physically.
Yeah.
But when you talk of a physical health condition, so for example, if you have trauma, if you've got an infection, if you've got cancer, if you develop diabetes or high blood pressure, you know, those are conditions. However, being in good physical health doesn't necessarily mean even the presence or the absence of a physical health disorder.
Yes.
but rather it means actually that enhanced state of being in well-being, of being very well. So in the same way, mental health, it's this definition that I've just spoken about. You're in a state of mental well-being, psycho-emotionally. I would include spiritually, socially as well, for the holistic health there. You're in such a good state of health that you're able to cope with normal stresses of life. Life is stressful. Contrary to popular pop culture belief, to our microwave generation, there's nothing that comes on a platter in life. Life is tough. Life is hectic. And actually, a lot of those pressures in life are actually meant to be for our good. Without the normal stresses of life, we cannot develop. We cannot grow. We cannot thrive. There's therefore nothing to be strong about if there is no opposing pressure. So I speak of pressure and stresses of life in a very positive sense. And what you want is to, in your life, to have a set of pressures that spur you on into becoming the best version of you. Normal stresses that spur you on into developing into your full potential without overwhelming your coping mechanisms, without overwhelming your sense of well-being, without interfering with your day-to-day life, with how you relate to yourself, you relate to your family, how you relate to your community, and how you relate in the workplace, and ultimately what you bring to the table as a functional and a responsible citizen or member of society. So that is good mental health. And if you think about it, we all should have good mental health. Wow. And there's a lot of people who don't have a mental health disorder, but they're not in good mental health.
Wow. Don't get to that anyways. Leading on what you just said, or predicated on that backdrop, why do you think that mental health literacy is actually necessary? What are its benefits? And can you let our audience know why you engage in mental health advocacy in African context and across the world? What is your experience in your work as a mental health advocate?
Wow. Okay. So there's so many angles, isn't it? There's so many layers to your questions, but I'll try and dissect it.
Like a three-part.
There's a three-part to the question, yes. Okay. So the first one, why do I think mental health is important? I think I've partly answered that. We all have mental health. We all should be the best versions of ourselves, being able to cope with normal stresses of life, being able to realize our potential, because we turn up on earth, yes, naked from our mother's wombs, but filled with lots and lots of gifts, talents, potential to become, to be a solution, to be a problem solver, to be trailblazers in the areas that God places us. And we turn up with so much creativity, so much intelligence to be able to, to be able to contribute to humanity, to be able to solve problems. So being able to do that, we can only actually really fully realize that if we're in good mental health. Now, I also spoke about our social context. We are people. No man is an island. We come in the context of family and all these other circles that I've previously described. So you want to be able to play your full part. So as you rightly introduced me, I'm a relational fanatic. I'm a mom. I want to be able to play my motherly functions, my motherly duties. I want to be able to be a wife. I want to be able to be a daughter to my parents, be a responsible and a daughter that makes a difference. I want to be a friend. A friend in need is a friend indeed. I want to be able to be, so many other things to many people, to be you know, in my professional role, to be a general practitioner. That means to be a clinician, to be a scientist. When they come in with their problem, I want to be the listening ear that addresses their ideas, concerns, expectations. I want to be the clinician who explores and who walks, who holds the hand with them and explores their journey of life. So all of those things are different roles, and you can probably reflect on your own roles that we can only really fulfill and we can walk in if we're in good mental health. So that is why it's important.
Wow.
And ultimately, society functions based on individuals, based on the basic unit, which I believe is family, based on families who then assemble together to make a community. Communities that come together then to make to make society in whatever context that is. So the next part of your question was to do with advocacy work.
Yeah. Why do you engage in this advocacy work? You know,
why
even though it's kind of unpopular.
It's kind of unpopular, did you say?
Yeah, maybe in African context, it's kind of unpopular. People don't, like we pointed out before, they have that misconception of mental health. They see it as something that brings them, like you are not mentally okay. Or so, but to keep pushing, even in the midst of this misconception, in the midst of these obstacles, in the midst of all these daunting tasks, is quite arduous for you. So why do you keep pushing, even with all these obstacles on the way?
Nothing is going to stop me in this area, and I'm going to keep going higher and poking every area in life to just blow the trumpet that mental health matters. I think the reason you've touched on it, and I think that is my roots. Being an African woman, being an African girl, being an African doctor, Black African doctor, I have seen firsthand, right from when I was a little child, I've seen family members, I've seen neighbors who have suffered from mental health disorders. And I have learned from a young age, not positively, but I have assimilated, let me say that's a better word. I've assimilated from our society that you can be anything. You can be weak in many ways, but don't be weak in your mind. You can have many illnesses. You can even have HIV, but don't lose your mind. In our language, you know, usapenge, you know, and unopenga, that means you have grown crazy. It is the last thing anybody wishes for, because there's just, I think underlying it is a real sense of ignorance around mental health, just not being fully informed and not understanding the science of mental health, but also the background of mental health. And maybe sometimes we understand the background of mental health, but not as well. So it's led to a lot of superstition in Africa. You've got a lot of beliefs. We are very spiritual, deeply spiritual people, and that is a positive. And we know, for example, in studies that are done here in the scientific world in mental health, that having a faith or having spirituality is protective for your mental health. It is good for your mental health. You know,
coming to that. I have a question.
Yes.
Anyway.
We'll come to that. All right, we'll come to that. But
Yeah.
the reason why I'm mentioning it is that at the same time, the same spirituality and the same religious ideologies can cause people to be more prone to stigmatization, demonization, because, you know, you cannot, you know, having mental health problem means you're weak, means you don't have enough faith, means you're not praying enough, means that you don't believe in God a lot. And all of those things are sort of tarred going too far. And there are misconceptions about mental health and what it is and how really they define how, you know, spirituality differs from mental health. So sometimes it's a poor definition, which then causes more trouble and more problems than it does benefit.
Okay. Wow. let's talk about depression. According to the World Health Organization.
Did I answer your third part of the question, my brother?
Yeah, well, you answered it because you talked about how mental health literacy is necessary in the African context, which is why you keep pushing, advocating for the work. And so it was a good answer anyway. I feel my our audience, one of the things they can get from your answer is that beyond the misconception of mental health is the fact that we should spread this message. We should join a relational fanatic like you in promoting that awareness of mental health literacy across the homes, across offices, communities, and all that, because we are all part of the whole community. As Aristotle would say, man is a social being, and anyone who can't live in a society is either a beast or a god.
Oh,
so that's what he said. Okay.
Yes. I mean, while you're there, sorry, can I hold you there? Because I think it's important, rather than us wanting to get through all the points, it's important actually that we carry our audience very well here. I thought literacy was a good word. And when you sent your invite to me, I was like, wow, this is so Sirpeter, this is so academic, and this is so sophisticated. But would you care to explain what literacy means? Because it means a lot of things to a lot of people. And when you think literacy, you don't always think of health, you think of education. So can you quickly highlight, why did you choose literacy, and what is it about literacy that adds on to this conversation that makes it apt in the context that we're discussing?
Okay. Why I chose literacy actually is because we know that in African context, sometimes literacy can be misconstrued too, anyway, to mean somebody who can read and write. But when you talk about literacy in this context, actually refers to competence, or knowledge in a specified area. Just like someone can say that computer literacy is essential, or that financial literacy is necessary for your financial freedom. So mental health literacy is gaining the necessary skills, competence and tool sets that will enable you have a normal mental health lifestyle, like the WHO defined
definition,
an emotional well-being that will help you to function productively and be a useful citizen within the community or the society which you exist. So literacy in the other sense depicts competence, depicts awareness, the consciousness, the knowledge of knowing what mental health is, what it constitutes, and how to actually achieve mental health in a manner that fosters both your own personal aspiration, that fosters the aspiration of the community, in a way that we all achieve the common good. So that's what I actually mean.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. Now you can move on to the next question.
Okay. No, I just want to take you on the topic of depression. Many people are living in depression across the whole world. And to be frank with you, according to the WHO, is the cause of about 302 million to 280 million, within that range, are living in depression globally. And like I said before, depression can lead to suicide, and about 700,000 people commit suicide annually. In fact, the figure is even higher than that. It's because in Africa, we are poor at gathering data. So most of the data comes from WHO or UN, which may not take a whole gamut of cognizance of the whole gamut of the African context. But something striking here is that as a mom, the rate of women living in depression is higher, about 10.4% compared to men, about 5.5%. So what ideas do you have, effective ways that someone can actually can apply to get out of depression? I mean, depression at least in the mini level, not a macro level where the person has already fallen deep, that he needs psychotherapy or a medical expertise to be brought out. But at least, depression, till someone gets in and come out. So what effective strategies can one deploy to be able to come out of depression?
Okay, so well, that's a very profound question, and again, I don't think I can comprehensively answer that, but I think try to touch on themes. Depression is by far one of the most commonest mood disorders. Now, I say mood disorder because in terms of psychiatry or mental health disorders, I don't know if you've heard about things like the ICD-10 or DSM, which are sort of manuals for mental health, for talking about mental health conditions. There are hundreds of mental health problems that are there. And so I just want to highlight that, because I think even because of time pressure, if we manage to just talk about depression, it's fine. But I think I want people to go away understanding that mental health disorders, there is such a range of them. You know, there are psychotic disorders where somebody experiences something outside of reality and they're sort of in their own world, things like schizophrenia, for example, or some certain types of delusional disorders. You've got then mood disorders, and depression is one of the major ones of mood disorders. With it, categorized with it, is things like bipolar disorder, yes, and seasonal affective disorder. You've got post-traumatic stress disorder, other sort of conditions which relate to one's mood, or mania, which is sort of when someone has got elevated or elevated mood, or hypomania. So quite a few things there. Now, it's important again to sort of think of other things, for example, like stress, which is such a common experience, or mental health experience, or psychological, let's say psycho-emotional experience, which sometimes can lead to, in combination with other factors, which can lead to depression, but also things like that are more common, like insomnia, you know, difficulty sleeping, which can affect how our minds work. You have substance misuse, for example, alcohol misuse, of drug abuse, and things. All of those things do come under mental health problems. But sort of tracking back to depression. Depression can be defined in many ways, and we've got, as doctors, so I'm a general practitioner, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a specialist, but in sort of basic medical understanding, depression can be measured or assessed in different ways. So if somebody comes to me saying, I feel low, or I feel like I'm depressed, or I'm feeling suicidal, as you rightly say, a lot of people who are suicidal is because they are depressed. There are other reasons why people can become suicidal, but by far being depressed is one of them. When they come, there is a range of questions that we need to ask, and there are a number of what we call core features of depression that are divided into different types. For example, biological symptoms, cognitive symptoms, physical symptoms of depression, and psychological symptoms of depression. So those core symptoms are divided, and when a doctor is assessing whether someone is depressed, they elicit these different types of symptoms that are there, and there are criteria that we use to determine whether someone has got a depression at all, or they've got, if they do have depression, is it a mild form of depression? Is it a moderate form of depression? Or is it a severe form of depression, which you rightly alluded to there? Because depending on what level it is, it determines what kind of treatment that they then receive. Yeah. So with depression, when we talk of, for example, psychological symptoms of depression, we talk of things like anhedonia, that is a loss of interest in the things that you usually enjoy. We talk of things like guilt, someone feeling guilty about their life or their family life or state of existence. We talk about low self-esteem, for example. Those are a few examples of those symptoms. There are physical symptoms of depression, for example, loss of appetite. People can lose weight, sometimes gain weight. You can have things like disturbed sleep pattern, where someone has got what we call early morning waking, where they wake up very early either 4 or 5 consistently because they're feeling depressed, or alternatively, they might oversleep. They're sleeping for 14, 16 hours of the day, you know, that kind of thing. So it can either go both ways. So those are some of the biological symptoms of depression. The other symptoms to do with cognition, for example, lack of concentration. That's one, and many others. You can look it up on the internet. There's tons of them. So
we
when
put the link in the comment section so that people can actually access more information.
All right. Okay. Yes, I will try to, because I would need to get out of this our dialogue chat for me to post. But I can definitely send you links when you're talking so that you can put in the chat box.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. Did I answer your question? So that is depression. In a nutshell, that's what depression is. It's a description of symptoms, and there are a number of symptoms that we consider. So not two depressed people will be the same.
Indeed.
Because people will exhibit different symptoms or features of depression depending on what's causing their depression. Equally, when we talk of etiology, or when we talk of why depression happens, there is a range of symptoms, there's a range of causes, from psychological causes, from social causes. There are, you know, things like illnesses. There are certain conditions that can predispose people to having depression. For example, if someone has got an underactive thyroid, they can then develop depression. So it's not just a matter of how strong you are mentally, but because depression, we know that the symptoms of depression manifest when we look at the science of it. There are chemicals in the brain, or what we call neurotransmitters, that are responsible for making us, or that determine how we feel in terms of, you know, mood. So when these neurotransmitters are low for whatever multitude of reasons, then you can have manifestation of depression. Equally, when these chemicals are too much, it can also cause different problems. So I'm taking time to explain these chemicals and the neurobiological basis of how we think about depression as doctors, because it's also important when you think about what can you do, which was your next question, isn't it? What can you do to circumvent or to try and reduce the incidence of developing depression? So there's a range of things that you can do based on the fact that there are a multitude of a number or a range of causes. And then we basically divided, and personally I divided into, there is pharmacological and non-pharmacological measures, or drug treatments and non-drug treatments, to put it simply. And all the time, when you come to a doctor, what a doctor should be doing, or a clinician or a psychologist, it's not just doctors who manage depression, by the way. Even friends can manage depression. I'm sure you're familiar with my friendship bench that I'm always advocating for on social media.
Yes.
Yeah, one does not need to be a professional in order to manage depression. So what I would say is, for me, I think, you know, what we can do about depression starts from the home. It starts from the home. It starts from conception. You know, it starts because in conception, when mothers are pregnant, that is the time when those neurochemical pathways, the brain is being developed, the chemicals are being developed, the psychological pathways are being developed. And we know that an experience that a woman goes through in pregnancy, even after, before and during birth, can shape the brain of a child and what it's predisposed to. So it's a two angle here. I'm speaking to us as individuals who are born of a woman, but also I'm speaking to mothers who bear children to say, be mindful of your health and your well-being, even as you're pregnant, because during that time you're also shaping the brain of your child, and maybe why in the future they may be more prone to depression than usual. So there's a book I can recommend on this if you want to know a lot more, called Why Love Matters. I'll try and find the link here. It's written by a psychologist who's called Gerard, but yeah, I'll share it in the comment section as well. So all of those things that happen while we are little, while we're growing up, so our experiences of childhood, our childhood experiences shape us a lot. Whether we go through trauma, do we experience loss of parents, do we have reliable caregivers, are we given a caring and nurturing environment where we form good relationships with the caregivers and form secure attachments that help us to be psychologically healthy? Have we gone through that? So that's childhood experiences, but also growing up, our experiences in school. As we go to school, do we experience bullying or not? While bullying, experiencing bullying is not in itself an evil, but it's how that event is then dealt with. Is that addressed in a meaningful way that helps us to understand that we matter, and that our feelings matter, and that even if we're in distress, there are other responsible adults who can come to our rescue and who can help us to resolve that distress and those negative emotions that we experience. Because throughout our life, throughout childhood, throughout the youth, if you don't have that, what you do is you internalize the negative experiences that you have. And because oftentimes as children, we don't have the adequate resources to know how to get out of that distress and difficult place, we end up sort of just not even crying. If you think about a baby who cries for a mother's attention, wants milk, nobody comes. Over time, that child learns there's no point in crying, because if I cry, nobody's going to come. So therefore, in my distress, you just sort of internalize, you turn inwards, and you become sad, and it gives feelings of hopelessness. It gives feelings of helplessness and despair. So that is sort of foundation of it. But forming good relationships, social relationships with family, with also friends, in our workplaces, in school, all of those things are protective, because what they do is, through communication and through talking, we learn and we teach our brains that actually, if I'm in distress, I can reach out to somebody and somebody can be of help. And then I can, I can rejoice again. So I'm spending time really focusing on this, because I think in Africa, which is the context to which we're speaking to mostly, we are very good at understanding the importance of family and community experiences. But, I think sometimes, and with time, we forget why those things work. We forget why those things are emphasized in our culture. And also, not to mention any less, we do have, even though we appreciate and we focus on family, we have other problems to do with community and family. There is a lot of, abuse that happens in homes, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and that's not talked about. That remains a taboo. All of those things become almost a festering ground, or a nurturing environment for depression, because what you have is this society that is on the outside functional, but then inwardly there's a lot of negative things and a lot of abuse that's happening. So it can become difficult with a hierarchical structure. It can become difficult for victims or people who suffer to speak up, because they're afraid, what's going to be said about them? Are they going to be blamed for feeling like this or for having experienced this? And that's where it becomes difficult, because if you can't have the conversation, people cannot open up. And if you can't open up, then those feelings, when they are prolonged, then lead on to the development of depression. Now, I've talked to death about family relationships, but I really want to touch on something else that I'm very passionate about, and that is the development of routines, health routines, healthy well-being routines. And as you checked in Beulah Oak Wellness this weekend, we were talking about having healthy goals, wellness goals. And that's about being aware and being mindful that, our health is not a given. It's not something that will just come to us simply because we exist. But we have to be intentional about these things, and we have to make an effort to take the necessary steps that are required for us to be in good mental health. So when we talk of good health routines, we're talking of day to day when you look at your life. What is your sleep routine like? We talk of things like sleep hygiene when you get time, because I'm aware of that we are running out of time. You can look up, what is your sleep routine like? And do you have healthy habits around sleep? Same thing, sleep is important, but also diet is important. Food and eating is important. Are we making necessary steps to plan our meals, to think about the nutrition and what we need in order to be healthy? Rather than living, I have got a plan. I don't know if you've seen my planner in some of my advocacy work, where on a Sunday with my family, I sit and I say to the children, what would you like to eat this week? I want to be family centered, not just wake up because I'm stressed and I just cook the most convenient thing for me that no one is going to eat, or that is not going to be healthy. So we take time to plan, what are we going to eat? Because eating well, eating healthy, balanced meals that are nutritious, full of water, vitamins, depending on where you are. Here, for example, in England, it's already dark, and it's only 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, because we're having shorter days and longer winters. So we are vitamin D deficient, most of us. My sons now know when we're in the supermarket, Mommy, we've run out of vitamins, so we add a little bit extra of what we need, buying fruit and things like that. I'm taking time again because I feel Africans, we love our food, but sometimes we comfort eat, and we eat for joy and parting, what we associate with joy and parting, but not necessarily what is nutritionally balanced. I know a lot of Africans, when they see salad, for example, they see greens, they'll be like, am I going to eat like
That's quite anyway. Some of those meals, they don't count it even as food. They don't count fruits as food, even though they have it in abundance. They see it as, for the whites or for the West, not part of the routine meal. Is an occasional, and not everyone is actually devoted to it. I like that point on nutrition, actually, because in Africa, most of us here are overfed but undernourished. Okay, so is a crucial point, and I would like you to keep buttressing on that.
Yeah, that is incredible, isn't it? And I mean, that's before we even go into undernourishment, as in underfeeding, hunger, starvation. In Africa, we also know a lot of starvation. And the real reason why starvation is a problem is, again, not the amount of food, but amount of nutrients that are required, as is, for example, exemplified when children develop what we call kwashiorkor, and they lack protein. They might be eating a lot of other things, but actually they don't have the balance of the necessary nutrition. So nutrition is very important. And actually, it's shown that when we eat balanced, healthy meals, and by the way, they don't have to be Western. When you look at our African foods, we have a range of things that we can eat and draw upon that are balanced and that are healthy. I mean, I can think of, for example, in Zimbabwe, we have fresh vegetables, we have got fruit as well, and root plants, things like nuts, traditional foods that are not processed. which help us to have fiber as well as good nutrition. We've got things like also watching the methods of cooking. I'm speaking to men and women because we all can cook. Watching how our methods of preparing food. Sometimes we like to fry things a lot, you know, and it's okay maybe at Uncle Jake's party. But, you know, if you're frying things every day, soon enough, your body, your mental health, your physical body is going to protest and say, actually, this is not healthy for me. So, you know, it's being resourceful with what we have, and it's looking at what we have and seeing actually what could confer a healthy, balanced diet here. And I think we've got advisors in different communities, healthcare professionals, doctors. Now with things online, you can just look up things online. What is a balanced meal? But we need to be intentional about it, because if we don't watch what we take in, even physically, it will affect what goes on in our minds. So I've spoken of sleep, I've spoken of dietary routines.
Yeah. Just a question from the audience. There's a question from the audience here. You know, it says, is there a scientific basis, you know, to the relationship between nutrition and sleep? If so, let us let them know.
Nutrition and sleep.
Yeah.
I would say yes from the top of my head. I can't think of an exact study because I always want to think of peer review studies and scientific, you know, evidence, a hardcore before I answer such a question. But anecdotally, or sort of on a basic level, low level evidence basis, there is a relationship between nutrition and sleep. Why? I'll give the most basic of examples. Try being hungry for a few days. Are you able to switch off and sleep?
That's quite basic, really.
It's basic. Try being hungry. Can you sleep? You can't. Why? Because your body, so in order for sleep to be activated, there are certain chemicals that are released, chemicals like melatonin and things like that. There are neurotransmitter pathways that are released to say, right, the body is in a state of calm, is in a state of rest. It can switch off in order to reboot. It can switch off in order to reprocess. It can switch off in order to rest and rejuvenate, which is the purpose of sleep. But when you are not nutritionally, you know, catered for, if you think about it, it means your body physiologically will not be in balance. It will not be a balance because you're not getting all the things that you need. And sometimes the body can be good at compensating for that lack of homeostasis nutritionally, or lack of being well nourished. It can compensate for it in other ways, you know, for a while, until the chain breaks, because now it really can't take it anymore. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So just because you are not having enough nutrition and you're sleeping well, it doesn't mean that it's okay. It just means that your body is able to compensate for now, because you're managing in all these other ways, and you're managing to rest in other ways. But give it time. If, for example, you have got you're getting too much carbohydrates, processed carbohydrates, soon enough you might develop, I'll pick a random condition like diabetes mellitus. When you develop something like that, which doesn't happen just because of nutrition, by the way, there are other factors as well, but I'm just giving for arguments just to make a point. When you then become physically ill, you get into pain. Again, you see how that's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect your peace, and you won't be able to really switch off, because your body, the signals being sent in your body is that you're not in a healthy, nourished place where you can relax and you can switch off. We also know, because our function, the way we function, the way our bodies work, the cells, how they work, they work based on nutrition, on the availability of all the nutrients and energy that it needs. So if you're not getting that, you might, again, because of concentration, will, determination, you might be able to function for a little bit, but before you know it, you won't be operating on your optimum levels and in an optimum way, because you're not maintaining good nutritional habits. I want to touch on the third routine that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about because I love it, but I struggle the most with, and that is physical activity. You know, as society has changed, you know, now we're no longer hunting, gathering. We're no longer going to the woods to gather firewood. We're not walking everywhere. We are driving in our cars. I mean, our supermarket is 10 minutes away, but I drive to the supermarket. You know, it means our lives now, modern life, is so convenient, and we are less active than we were. I used to play basketball in high school. Of course, my days were sort of finished, but when that was done, you know, you sort of ask yourself, oh, what do I do now? I can't just go out and run because the weather has turned, you know, quite ugly. There are no people that I can play basketball with. You know, there are many reasons why I'm no longer as active as I used to be. That doesn't mean it's okay just to sit like a cabbage at home and eat, consume, pray to God that I'm going to be in good health and live forever in good strength. That is superstition. That is not faith. That is not spirituality. That is toxic religion. We need, when we take in, we must bring out. When we take in energy, we must exercise. Great impressions without expressions cause depression. These were words by one of Rick Warren, one of the pastors in America, but I'll never forget that statement. But what he was alluding to...
Can you recap the statement once more?
Okay. Yeah. Great impressions or what you take in without expression or utilization of what you take in cause depression or stagnation. Because if you consume more than you need and you actually don't exercise and make use of the energy that you have, over time, you're going to have net gain of energy or whatever you're taking in. By the way, this doesn't apply to nutrition alone, where we talk of obesity, which is something that I'm constantly fighting. I'm happy to empathize with many other people here. But it also speaks of things that we consume in terms of media, social media, television. It speaks of the books that we consume. It speaks for anything that we take in through our ears, through our eyes, through our nose, through our mouths, through our sense of touch. Everything that we experience in the real environment and real world, when we overconsume without a place to process that and to express that, to exercise that, ultimately it will cause depression. And I use the word depression here loosely, not the clinical depression we're talking about, but as in a state of apathy, a status quo of indifference and mediocrity, because you're just so overwhelmed and you're not making use of what you have. So, for example, right now, we've learned what we've learned. If you sit at this, if you sit and say, oh, I've had a good 50 minutes with Ùgò and Von, and I've learned about mental health, and you do nothing about it, guess what? It's just going to be a burden in your mind, and it's not going to serve you in any way. But if you take the information that you have got, and if you utilize it, if you write in your journal, what am I going to do with this information? How am I going to create smart goals, smart, specific, appropriate, about smart goals? How am I going to make smart goals in order for this information to serve my purpose or to serve my ends? Then you're beginning to talk. Then that exercise, that psychological and physical exercise, is going to serve you and begin to yield fruits in your life. So physical activity is important. And here in England, we recommend that an adult go through 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. Now, you can divide that in any way that you like. And obviously, that's a minimum moderate intensity. You can go above and beyond. But, you know, how I divide mine, I've got a 30-minute workout that I do from home, and I do that over 4 or 5 days in the week. I make sure that if I go somewhere and I take the stairs instead of, you know, instead of an elevator. That's right. You know, it's simple choices like I need to go to the shops. It's a warm day. What am I going to do? So I'm going to walk. And I say to the boys, even it's cold, let's wear our welly boots. Let's wear our coats. Let's have a bit of a walk so that we can exercise. That's very important. Physical activity is important, particularly for depression as well. It's been proven that, you know, a few days of moderate intensity exercise like that actually is equivalent to a low to medium doses of antidepressants, of actual medication. Why is that? Because when we exercise and when we are active, we actually allow our bodies to produce and to release those neurotransmitters that I was talking about, that are responsible for making us feel brighter, for making us feel happier, like serotonin, medication, neurotransmitters like dopamine, you know, things like that, that makes us feel alive and more, that elevates our mood. So physical activity is very important, and we need not to binge exercise, but we need to create sustainable ways of exercising and look at your situation. What suits you better? You know, how can you adjust to your demands? Sometimes people work, sometimes people have got children, and you have to work around and find a schedule that works for you. Anyway, so I've spoken of that. Other routines that are important are mind routines, psychological routines, and spiritual routines are often neglected. When I say that, I talk, for example, with mind, things like journaling, practicing gratitude, being thankful. Those things are important. Listening to music is very good for our mental health. Worship. That's right. And sometimes that crosses over with worship and praise. You know, if you're, for example, a Christian, or if you're of other faiths, I'm sure they would have other, what you call rituals that we take on a regular and routine basis in order to create this well-being, states of well-being, because we're doing something enough and repeatedly enough to promote that good mental health. Meditation, for example, is very good. Practicing mindfulness, you would have heard about mindfulness, and that talks about being present, being aware of the present, and being able to experience what you are and where you are completely. If you are walking, are you enjoying that walk? What are you noticing? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you tasting? What are you feeling? All of those things make us opens our bodies and our minds to fully experience the beauty of what we go through, even on a daily basis. Having grounding exercises, so life will be filled with stresses. You will have a difficult patient to work to see. You will have you experience abuse on social media, something that would take you off guard. You need to be able to separate that from yourself and say, right, okay, that's happened to me, but it does not have to define me or determine the destiny of my day to day. Actually, that's happened to me. It's their problem. They're projecting their own dysfunction on me, but how am I going to process this? I need to gather myself. I need to come back to a grounded level. You know, it might be through playing a song. I like listening to a song when I'm going to work, for example, you know, something that takes you back to your state of homeostasis, and you can create so many routines. I can't cover them, all of them today. Even simple things like self-talk. Self-talk is very important. How we speak to ourselves and the stories we tell ourselves about our experiences actually shape how we experience mental well-being. And if not checked, how we can develop mental health disorders, if that makes sense. So I've spoken about psychological, psycho-emotional routines. There's so spiritual routines, reading the word, reading scriptures. If you're Muslim, reading your Quran, whatever you have investigated to be the truth, the real truth that's out there. You know, I say that intentionally because even though I'm convinced and I've signed up to Christianity, that it is the way, the truth, the life, I'm aware that people's journeys are different. And some people were at different places in our discovery of truth. And some people may belong to other faiths. Some people may not subscribe to any faith at all. Even if someone does not subscribe to a religious, dogmatic perspective or point of view, the fact still remains, as human beings, we have got a spiritual nature that's able to engage with the transcendent, that's able to engage with the metaphysical. And it's important to engage that, whether be through music or candles. I know a lot of my atheists or some who define themselves as humanist, they will enjoy some art, for example, you know, to try and engage with that aspect of life. But whatever you do, wherever you are, you must engage your spirituality, praying every day, giving thanks every day, worshiping, you know, on Sunday, meeting up with other believers to encourage each other. All of those things are very good for our mental health, and we cannot overstate their importance. So those are some of the things that can help. Now, I want to quickly touch, because that's the ideal, but oftentimes things don't work out well for some reason, either because we're experiencing domestic abuse at home, or we've fallen into an unhealthy habits, using drugs, using alcohol. We might get to a place where we need extra help, where we need to reach out to a friend, where we need to reach out to a professional, where we need to reach out to an online resource, something that we can engage in online to try and resolve those first few signs of depression. I want to stress the importance of self-awareness, being aware of where you are in terms of your feelings, in terms of your thoughts, in terms of your behavior, and being able to identify when things are going wrong. Because it is that place of self-awareness that will raise the antennas to say, right, you need to seek out for help. And when you see that you're not well, take this, if anything, from this talk. It's okay not to be okay. It is okay not to be okay. And
Wow.
when you acknowledge that, you seek for help, there is a lot of help available. And just like it does not take overnight to develop depression, also coming out of depression, some people experience supernatural, I don't know, miraculous lifting off of depression. But for a lot of people, it's a process. Why? Because of all these things we've been talking about, creating routines. Normally, what causes these problems are multiple range of factors, multidimensional factors. So in the same way, getting out of it, be patient with yourself, be compassionate with yourself, because it might take time, and time heals a lot of wounds. There's that cliche saying. And
Yeah.
when you allow yourself time and you engage in those things that you know you need to do, you know, before you know it, you will be in a much better place.
Wow, wow. This is so much like a masterclass for getting out of this depression. I must confess, and I am inclined to go on and on and on and on, but I guess that the best way is that we are going to go for a part 2 of this program, maybe next time, so that we can unpack, you know, the family work-life balance. We unpack social media and this cause of depression, and we go deeper on the part 2 of this program. So, but like we actually pointed out to our viewers out there, you look at your nutrition. You have to eat well. You have to exercise regularly. You have to take enough water. You have to take good rest, good sleep hygiene. I love that. In fact, I learned something new today. I never knew something like that existed. So, sleep hygiene. So make sure you get enough sleep. Like the Sleep Foundation says, a minimum of 8 hours sleep daily. And then you need that a kind of trust, a bond in the community where you socialize with people and, you know, share your worries, and people can help you. They can advise you, encourage you, motivate you to live better. So, and then you have to be compassionate with yourself. Yeah, you have to be you have to have that patience with yourself as you go through the process of coming out of depression or having a mood disorder or mood swing or whatever. So, but you really have to listen to this program, and if you are in this program, go ahead and click the like button. For we are going to invite Dr. Von Shurro next time, so that she will walk us through deeper levels on how we can live our life in such a way that both our aspirations and our values and our lifestyle all gears towards giving us a powerful mental and physical health. So, Dr. Von Shurro, thank you so much for coming to the show. Okay. What do you say to
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for listening. Let's continue the conversation online. Our social media handles, my brother will share with you maybe in the comments later on. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, but mainly I use Facebook because of my picture storytelling passion and sort of advocacy of mental health in general. But let's continue the conversation. Like I said, I knew we are going to run out of time, and now we're like overboard. But
it's
thank
really
you for it was worth it. And you know something, my brother, actually, every time I come and I have this discussion with you as well, it's not only me giving out, but, a lot of times I also speak back to myself. And, there's the old saying, physician, heal thyself, and you know who the great physician is, really. So, this is as valuable to me as it is to our listeners and as it is to you. And I want to thank you again for organizing this to raise awareness of mental health. Stigma must fall. Stigma must fall because there's no shame. Because, like physical health, mental health matters. And, I hope that we will be part of the next generation that contributes to such a positive conversation around this issue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Von Shurro. To our listeners, your mental health matters. Thank you, and see you next time as we continue the conversation. We share some links at the comment section for you to explore further, and then we'll have a part 2 of this show. Stick with us, and this is Sirpeter's show, where we analyze issues in a way that fosters the common good. Thank you, and bye-bye for now.
Goodbye.